So the headlines is, so I heard it on, the first place I heard it was an NPR podcast. They talked about remote work. And then there's another article that was on Forbes, and the headlines are very grabbing. Working from home leads to decreased productivity, research reveals. And so there was this paper conducted by, it's a working paper conducted by Stanford Institute for Economic Policy and Research. And it really pulls together lots of different studies and pulls this data together. But I still feel like it's hit and miss, I guess, and it's all depending on who you're looking at and when.
So I saw these headlines, right? Basically, the summary is like, remote work may not be as productive as we thought.
Correct.
And so there was one study that I saw that was like of Indian call center workers. Is that the same one that's being used for all these headlines?
There was two, it looks like there was two studies, but yes, the main one was this call center study, and they figured out that the fully working remote appears to lower average productivity by 10 to 20%. And so they had data from a Fortune 500 firm that had both in-person and remote call centers.
Right.
And when they shifted to full remote, then they saw these decreases in productivity. Now, I can go back to my call center days. Especially if it's a tech support call center, customer service thing, you would do whatever you could to not take the phone calls. like if there was a company meeting, you were like, yes. Now the sales teams, those guys are different because they're like, every second they're not on the phones, they're missing commissions in sales.
Right.
But so I could definitely see if you were at home, if you'd maximize any chance not to stay logged in and getting the active call. Or taking a little longer to do your documentation. I see how that could happen. And then, but they also stated there was a IT company in India, and they said what happened with that is employees had the same productivity, but they're working more hours. Hence, essentially that means they're 18% less productive. So it's mixed, right? Because to some extent, why are they working these more hours if they could get away with slacking if you're remote, right?
Right, because we know that's true, right? Nobody's disputing that remote workers, people who work from home, work more hours because they don't have the commute. And so you just get your coffee and instead of driving at 8 and starting work at 9, you start work at 8 at your desk, right?
Unplug. Yep.
Yeah. So that has been shown. I haven't seen any evidence to the contrary. I'm curious about these studies of the call center workers and the IT workers because I feel like it's got to be different for different types of work. Like Brian said here in the live chat, it depends how you look at it, what industry and what the employee is doing. It really depends what you're doing as to whether or not you're going to be more productive. And for call center workers, I feel like the camaraderie of being in the call center together and taking those calls and then having somebody to turn to if a call goes bad is really important.
Oh,
and doing that at home.
But you imagine a call center. Have you worked in a call center, Blake?
Well, no, I haven't worked in a support. Well, okay, no. At Flowcast, the marketing team was sort of like in between customer support and sales, and we had a boiler room where we had.
It's more like a boiler room or a sweatshop. It's definitely, and this is why it's so predictive. It's like you're under the. Yeah. Don't take 6 minutes to walk to the bathroom, like that kind of.
Right, but if you had to be in that sales pod by yourself at home doing sales calls, like I couldn't do that. I'd need like the people around me also doing it. It's sort of like the reason people run in a group or they bike in a Peloton is because everyone else inspires you to keep going and to not stop. And if you do it yourself, you're going to stop. Yeah. So I feel like certain jobs you can't extrapolate to all jobs. And to bring it to accounting, one of the reasons I think remote work has been so great for accounting is that so much of what we do is focus work that is really hurt by distractions in the office. Yeah. If you're working on that spreadsheet or that return, you really need to focus. And if people are walking in your office all day long asking you questions, really hard to focus.